So at the time, I had a best friend who was a fantastic intuitive channel. And I'd never heard of channeling before I met this friend, but I learned through her sharing her gifts with me that she could actually bring in communication from souls here on the planet. And so I said, "Oh, yay, help me with my mom." Please, because I need to know what does she need from me? I wasn't getting it right, and our relationship was really in a bit of a shambles. So she channeled my mom's soul. I learned what I was doing that was unhelpful. I learned what I could do that would be helpful. I learned how to stay connected to her during the rest of this earthly journey that she was having. And I learned what our souls were here to experience together and kind of what our agreements were. And it changed everything about how I related to her, how we felt around each other. We had a lot more fun. We laughed more. We still had lots of nonsensical communication exchanges, but it didn't matter because we were heart connected. And I saw what that did for me and my mom. And I realized if it can make a change in this relationship, it can probably affect all aspects of my life. So I started to learn how to channel for myself.
Welcome in. I'm Kimberly. I'm so glad you're here today. I am so excited about our guest, and I have such a heart for the work that she's doing. I think you're going to love her. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you leave and make sure you click that notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And if you want to keep track of what's going on the planet, but you feel like it's a little overwhelming, you might want to sign up for our Friday morning email newsletter. The link is in the description box down below. Every Friday morning, we send out a very short, very sweet, very free email newsletter highlighting what we think are the important events on the planet that we want to make sure that you hear about. Super easy to sign up. You just click the link down below. And with that, I would like to welcome in channel and medium Stephanie Banks. Stephanie, welcome in.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. I'm really happy to be here with you.
I'm happy to be here too. I'm loving the energy already. This is really feeling good. You are a channel primarily, and you also work as a medium. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how this happened for you? And then I'm going to spend the next hour peppering you with questions.
That sounds like fun. My journey with channeling started with my mother's journey with her dementia. So I have a clinical background as a speech therapist, and I had a lot of experience working with people who have dementia, but it's really very different when it's a family member and especially my own mom. So what I was finding, as many people do when they have a loved one with a cognitive disorder like dementia or disease, is our communication was breaking down and breaking apart, and our relationship was suffering as a result of it. So at the time, I had a best friend who was a fantastic intuitive channel. And I'd never heard of channeling before I met this friend, but I learned through her sharing her gifts with me that she could actually bring in communication from souls here on the planet. And so I said, "Oh, yay, help me with my mom." Please, because I need to know what does she need from me? I wasn't getting it right, and our relationship was really in a bit of a shambles. So she channeled my mom's soul. I learned what I was doing that was unhelpful. I learned what I could do that would be helpful. I learned how to stay connected to her during the rest of this earthly journey that she was having. And I learned what our souls were here to experience together and kind of what our agreements were. And it changed everything about how I related to her, how we felt around each other. We had a lot more fun. We laughed more. We still had lots of nonsensical communication exchanges, but it didn't matter because we were heart connected. And I saw what that did for me and my mom, and I realized if it can make a change in this relationship, it can probably affect all aspects of my life. So I started to learn how to channel for myself. I took classes. I went for trainings from a renowned psychic medium. I took classes from local mediums and intuitives, and now I do that and I teach others how to do it.
Yeah, wonderful. I want to back up and talk a little bit about your mom and how that transformed your relationship. Were you surprised by the information about your mother? And how did you shift your behavior to work with what you learned as a result of working with the channel?
Some of it felt surprising because I thought I was applying some of these great clinical tools to her and was frustrated that she wasn't interested in these clinical applications. She just wanted to be connected. She wasn't looking to improve her cognition. She wasn't oriented to the fact that she had an issue. So that part of it was a bit surprising to me and also frustrating and disappointing because here I had all this background in clinical work and my mom was like, no, you may not apply that to me. That's not for us. So what I learned and what I knew on a deep level, but sometimes we have to see it and hear it in multiple different ways and in different contexts, was that the most important thing that any of us needs is connection. And if I'm trying to reorient my mother to the fact that no, it's not Saturday, today is Wednesday. Remember, yesterday we did such and such. And so that's how you can know that it's Wednesday. That's not connection. That's just her being wrong and confused and flustered and disconnected. So I learned how to meet her where she was, no matter what the world looked like according to Joni. And that world was sometimes a lot more fun. And so that was a great part of joining her in that world. And sometimes it wasn't as much fun, but I knew that it was the path that maintained our connection. And therefore, she felt safe and I felt much more useful in the relationship.
What a great lesson about staying in the heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's so true. It's like here on the planet with the narrative that we're currently living in, but moving out of, we want to intellectualize and materialize everything.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
want to tell you it's Wednesday and not Saturday. We want you to know that.
Yes, we do. We're pretty committed to being right. Yeah.
Or just having, it's like, I'm going to tell you what's going on, and I want you to come along with me in my version of
Mhm.
reality.
Yeah.
It's so true. We're funny humans. So, what was it about the channeling that your friend did that hooked you? Because it sounded like all of a sudden, wow, there's a whole world out there, and I really want to go down that.
Oh, I'm getting the chills right now. It was the feeling of the presence of my mother's energy coming through her. And my clients report the same thing, and I know what they're speaking of because I have been channeled for, and I know what this is. But when the connection is made and it's clear, and the person that is being channeled for can feel the presence of their loved one, there's something very healing and transformational in that. It's very hard to put it to language because not everything has words, but I could feel the recommitment of my mother's soul with mine. Like I was making efforts to join her differently, to try to be open to what I might not be seeing. And she was therefore willing, her energy, her soul was willing to come forward and say, okay, here's where we can meet. Thank you for not knowing. Thank you for asking. Thank you for being open. And let me tell you now that these are the ways that you can reach me. These are the ways that you cannot. And these are the things that will shut me down and sort of lock you out. And these are the things that keep our walk joined. Because I was always very close with my mom when she was in a mentally well, healthy state. And we had so much humor and laughter and silliness between us. You can still have that with a loved one, sometimes even more when they're going through something like dementia, because there's a freeing and there's a playfulness that can be accessed for some, not for everybody necessarily, but for us, it was there. So that's what it held for me. That's what sold me on it. And also, this was not just channeling my mom that I had the honor of experiencing. I would sit with my friend in circles of women, and she would channel for everybody present. And so someone wanted to hear from their their parent, someone wanted to hear from their living child, someone wanted to hear from their cat Fluffy, someone wanted to hear from their favorite childhood tree. It didn't matter. She could channel all of that, and I could feel the resonance. I feel it right now in my body, the chills running down of like, oh my gosh, this is something. This is resonant with me. This is incredibly special, and it's affirmation that there's so much more to our journey. And that gives me a lot of hope and joy.
Two things. First of all, I want a circle like that. Can we do that together? Can you move to my neighborhood? And the second thing is I think when a human, an earth human connects with that different energy,
Mhm.
it feels so much better than the vibration that a lot of what happens on this planet is. And it's like, oh my gosh, I want to go over there and do
Yes,
that.
yes, yes. It's magical.
Yeah.
And like I said, healing, I'll keep coming back to that because it healed places that I didn't even know were in need of healing.
Yeah. So were you a quick study? Like did you start in pretty quickly, or was it a little bit of time before you could kind of shift into that space?
I luckily felt like I was a quick study. I was told. I didn't feel like I was a quick study. I did not have confidence for years in this. But my mentors would tell me personally, you've got something here. You need to keep pursuing this. This is something you can take very far. And I remember in my first set of classes, I went for my last class with my teacher, and she had me use a pendulum and gave me tasks to do with the pendulum. So it was a test, and I was very nervous. I was sweating. It was very stressful, not because of her, but because of the pressure I put on myself. She said, I want you to ask your spirit guides to spell out a word or two for you that relates to your channeling, a message for you about your channeling. And so I held my pendulum and I had my letter grid and I was just praying, please let something be spelled out. I was certain I was going to disappoint her and myself. And the pendulum starts to spell out CARTE and then BLANCHE. And at the time, I didn't know. And I'm sorry, I think my dogs are going to bark in a second. I'm so sorry.
That's
Um,
okay. It
at,
happens around here too.
okay. At the time, I did not know what that meant. Just I was a little familiar with the phrase, but wasn't sure. And she said, I know exactly what they're saying. They're saying that you can take your channeling work in any direction you want, and there is no limit here. And I thought, oh, okay. I don't even know what that means. Now I do. But that was very incredibly encouraging. But it took me years before I felt comfortable enough to channel for people, for the public, basically, people that
Yeah.
were not friends or related to me.
Yeah. Gosh, what a wonderful story with the pendulum. I want to tell you a story that happened to me a couple of days ago. It's related, I promise. I live in Florida. I'm getting on the freeway. Stephanie, I look over to the right, and you know those freeway workers, the state workers?
Yeah.
There's a state worker there with his truck, and he's on the side of the road with the vest and the hat, the helmet and the whole thing, walking one foot in front of the other with dowsing rods.
What? How did
I'm
you
like,
even know what those were?
well, because I know what dowsing rods are, and I just used dowsing rods when I was in Sedona at the medicine wheel there. And I was like, oh my gosh, the woo is everywhere.
That is awesome. I love that story.
Isn't that it's so it's like we're catching on to the greater population is
Mm,
catching on to the power of energy and
yeah.
how powerful that can be. So you started connecting, and anyone who is looking to connect,
Mhm.
my experience is that once you start down that road, it feels so good. It's like when you're in that energy, it's like, oh my gosh, this is easier. This is an easier life than the denseness that we've had on Earth for quite a bit. So you start developing your skills. Do you channel a specific collective, or do you meet with a client and then channel who they asked you to connect with? How does that work for you?
Yeah, for me, because I had this great model of my best friend who could channel everything, I saw what was possible and said, I want to do it that way. I want to learn how to do that. So that's what I do. I channel by request. I can channel any soul that's on the planet. I can channel anybody's higher self. I can channel the souls of the ancestors and loved ones on the other side. I can channel spirit guides. I can channel animals, trees, Mother Earth. It's all here for us. It's all spirit. So I do that and I tune in based on what my client is asking about. So if someone says just channel whatever's here for me, I don't do that because the messages tend to be much more general when I do that. So I always encourage people, I trust that they know what's on their heart and who they would like to hear from or what question they have. And we go from there. I help them get clarity on who to tune into, but I get specific when I tune in on who I'm bringing forward.
Yeah. When you're just working with yourself, in other words, downtime, or you're in a, a time of peace or meditation, do you connect in with your guides
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
like, hey, what's up, buddies?
There's really not a time that I'm not connected with my guides. This has been a ongoing unfolding, but yeah, we're always having conversations. I'm always feeling and hearing and sensing their nudges, their encouragement in certain directions, their laughter. I can tell when they're laughing at me, not negatively, but in a way of like, yeah, there she goes doing that human ridiculous behavior again. But yes,
Yeah.
I feel deeply connected to and supported by my team.
Yeah. What a wonderful place to be.
Mhm,
Exciting. So let's move on to the topic that everybody wants to talk about, at least I do. And that is the transition that we're going through on the planet.
mhm.
And why don't you share with me kind of your perception? I think there are a lot of different ideas about what is actually transpiring on the planet. Why don't you share with me what you've learned from your guides, what you've learned from the work that you're doing, and kind of how you see where we are right now on the planet. And then I want to kind of connect that in to our choices for incarnation on the planet at this time.
Okay, so wow, there's a great intensity here that we're all feeling. And what my channeling keeps pointing me and others back to is, of course, love, but also our responsibility to one another, which we have really come quite far away from. And whether we've been heading in that separateness direction for a while. And of course, the pandemic really did support this whole separation of everybody having to retreat into their own spaces. And so we are in the process of finding our footing again to come back to one another, to come back to care, to the co-creation of community, to the devotion that we have to seeing that we all of our hearts know that there is a better world that's possible. And if we can attune to the wisdom and guidance and insight of that wise heart, then we can actually start to serve into that, show care, awaken, be present to, activate our service around. We are moving out of a time of me focused and recognizing or remembering, because this isn't new. This has always been the case, but coming back to how we actually are meant to show up for and care for each other. And that's where most of us do derive our meaning and our purpose and our settled place is from how can I serve? That's one of my favorite questions to ask. How can I serve? There's lots of different ways. And we all have an area in our hearts that causes heartbreak, it could be violence, it could be the plight of children, it could be animals, it could be the earth. We have an area that speaks deeply to us and causes distress when we take a good look at what's happening on the planet. And I believe that that is a signal to us to move closer to that, to be in service to that. So on the macro, we're in a massive upheaval, and we have this beautiful opportunity to repair our relationship to ourselves, to each other, to the planet, to all life. And on the micro, we have to keep coming back to the wisdom of our heart and how it actually does want to be in deep connection with one another and the sharing of love. That's overly simplified, but that's what I think.
Yeah. How do you think humanity or Earth humans got so off track?
Well, we agree when we incarnate to separate from source, and there it begins. Then our soul calls in all of these different experiences and opportunities and relationships to fulfill what our goals are here. And we all have a little bit of a different set of goals, but the main goal is to come closer to agape, to unconditional love, to source energy. And then our spirit kind of is the overseer of the soul's experiences to keep the light shining so we can make our way back to that energy. So, how we came so far from ourselves, historically, we can track that through what we have been taught, whether it's by family or media or society, by our reliance on consumerism. Like there's so many areas here that I could touch on.
Where do we begin?
Yeah, it is all influenced, and we've come away with this idea that who we are isn't enough, that simply being isn't enough, that we have to have or buy, own or control. And so this notion of scarcity is really fed quite fluently throughout all of our experiences and becomes a system that we live by, so that we are now grabbing what we can grab and taking care of ours, whatever that means, forgetting that we actually do belong to each other across the globe.
Yeah, and I completely agree. But where I see it is, or the nuance that I see is that that's the narrative we've been fed.
Mm-hmm.
There's a story that has been created that benefits a very few people, that controls us in a very comprehensive way, from constant messages through media, through civilization, through that buy, that whole thing. And I see it as part of a calling for humans to get back to themselves, to start listening to themselves and stop playing in the game, to stop participating. And I really see it as, it's like we say, well, we've destroyed the planet. The planet is in need of repair, but I don't know that we did it. We're playing as part of this drama or this narrative on the planet without thinking, does this really serve us and the greater good? So it was easier to go along. And what I see now is people stopping to think, now, wait a minute, does this make sense? And looking again at how we can really live. And it seems like the systems have just gotten more divisive, more constrictive, more controlling. And humans are starting to say, wait a minute. And what I see from a broader perspective is that advanced civilizations in different reality systems understand the lessons that we're going through right now, that you have to work in the spirit of the collective and not for the goals of the individual.
I totally agree.
So
Yeah.
it's almost like we're going through these growing pains,
Mm.
here on Earth, from a very young civilization to maybe a civilization that's just sort of moving into being able to advance and mature and maybe get off the planet and become a part of the whole galactic world out there. What do you think about that?
I think it's all possible. I'm not, I don't hold tightly to any one particular belief because I'm always learning something that's counter to it every day. So just as soon as I think I've got a handle on something, I see evidence to something else. But I know for me, I love this earth so much, and I will do whatever I can to be in service to her and all of her life. Humans are part of that, but only part of it. And so I find such incredible meaning and joy and purpose in talking and connecting to plants and to animals and caring for, the all the beings that are around that want to be in communication with us. And I feel that being here is a tremendous gift. There is no other planet with life like this. There is no other planet with food like this. And while I'm here, I really want to be in service to the repair of the planet because I personally aware very heavily how human behaviors have contributed to the state of our mother right now, and she is suffering enormously, as are we in all life. And it is at our with our behaviors and our choices. And we equally can shift that and change that. And many, many are. This is a
Yeah.
time of awakening.
Yeah, and many, many are. And that's the exciting thing for me is I know right now with the energies on the planet and everybody's sort of waking up, developing their skills and abilities a little bit more. There are people in their garages coming up with the most creative, wonderful solutions for us to live in a way that's more gentle on the planet and more sustainable for us as a civilization. I
We
want to
have the
meet those garage
solution.
people.
Yeah. Well, actually, we already have the solutions. They have already been developed, they've been proven, they've been studied. We just need to shift because making changes in our behaviors is actually the hardest thing to do. And then putting funding where it actually belongs and moving it away from where it doesn't, also really hard under the current systems and structures. But the book Drawdown by Paul Hawken, all the solutions are in there. He did not develop them all. He wrote the book on what's there. But we don't even have to work at the solutions now. We just have to employ them.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm going to get that book. That sounds
Yeah,
fascinating.
mind blowing.
So, when you talk with your guides, particularly about the healing of the planet and the healing of, the collective here on the planet, what do they see or what do they share with you as the most important points?
It usually starts and ends with a person's connection to themselves. Because once we all know what it feels like to be these like walking heads, right? Where everything is just spinning, spinning in the thoughts. I can take my dogs on a walk, come home and forget like that I just took them. Like, did we walk? Because I was only thinking about this or planning that, or how many times do we drive somewhere and don't even remember how we got there? We arrive, but we're not actually present to the journey, to the experience. So my guides consistently bring me and also those that I'm channeling for back to ways to connect with the higher aspect of ourselves so we can recognize what is connection for what is true for us versus what is just repetitive, just habitual, and
Yeah.
start to question. And then there's a different feeling for each action that we take. And the heart, I believe, is an incredibly intelligent and intuitive organ. And it's designed to be used for this. Is this right for me? Does this make me want to lean in? Does this make me feel tight and constricted and withdrawn? Then that's not the right choice or option for me. So they are illuminating how we can access our own wisdom consistently and in every situation. And we can then apply that to all of our relationships, to our careers, to our professional journeys, to our choices, our decisions, the circumstances that we choose and find ourselves in. But it does, in my work, it's illuminated that the journey home is, begins and ends with you. We are the only aspect of ourselves that we take with us when we go is our soul. So we really are responsible to get to know who we are as a whole being.
and really heal ourselves. And I used to think, oh my gosh, that's such a cliche, get yourself together or heal yourself. But when you think about it, if you're healed and if you're treating yourself with love,
Mhm.
then you're able to treat your close relationship in a loving way and be a more loving family member and a more loving neighbor and a more loving community member. It just goes out from there. So our ultimate responsibility is getting inside of ourselves and connecting to that center of who we are. I want to talk about, this is a reality system where you come in with amnesia. So we don't know. We start from scratch. So this kind of the game of, can you go in feeling disconnected and swim your way back up again?
Mm,
Can you find it again? So that's a challenging task in and of itself. To say, oh yeah, I want a human body because I want to go through that. But then add on to it the huge shift that we're experiencing on the planet. I look around, I mean, this is the A team on the planet right now, as far
mm,
as people with courage and strength and determination, regardless of whether they've kind of connected with that yet. But
mhm,
these are this is some pretty powerful souls here right now.
mm. Yes, we have what we need for this great transformation. We have all of the energetic support we could ever need, and we have what we need from within as well.
Yeah,
So there's nothing stopping us. It's just that change is never made quickly,
I
and it's
know.
often never made without great resistance because it triggers fear. And fear is a very grasping and you know, stagnant energy just in the trying to hold on to what's been known or understood or believed for so long. So it's a huge challenge and it's lifetimes and lifetimes of the challenge. So I'm glad for all the characters that are here now that are committing to this and that we know exactly what we're doing, even if we don't always feel like we know what we're doing. Our souls and our spirit knows what they're doing here. So we can keep surrendering to and asking for divine guidance and wisdom in whatever ways really resonate because we're going to do this. There's going to be an outcome here and I'm going to hold the vision of the one I want to see.
Yeah, I'm feeling good about it. I had actually a personal shift a couple of days ago where all of a sudden I went, it's going to be okay.
Mm,
It's going to be okay. And when I look out now, it just feels peaceful and exciting and in a fun way. That's what I'm seeing right now. Here's an interesting thing is when something happens, like a piece of information goes out into the collective, and I think, oh my gosh, there it is. Everybody's going to wake up now, and we're all going to start marching in this particular direction to clean everything up and live more sustainably and come from the heart and eat really healthy food and that sort of thing. And I realized, no, Kimberly, it takes like 10, 12 years for that information to work through the collective.
mhm. Yes. And then to dismantle the systems and structures that have been holding the old way in place is I don't want to think of how long that takes. So,
I think something's got to give, because a lot of times the resistance is a profit motive.
oh
In other
yeah,
words, they don't want to give it up because that's keeping me in a very fancy house and all my board members in a very fancy house. So,
absolutely.
it's like we're being driven by, I don't want to say greed so much, but we're being driven by monetary. And that often is the logic for decisions. Well, this is going to make us more money. Well, this is more profitable. Well, this is going to raise the share price. Well, it's also destroying the fertility of our earth.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah,
And nobody's thinking about that in
yeah.
particular.
Some of us are stressing
Yeah.
about it every day.
Yeah. And I'm one of those people. I'm one of those people. Okay, so I am noticing, and I'm sure you are too, because you're one of the people that I have been interested in the topic of reincarnation and channeling and this and that for a long time, for a few decades now at least. I am seeing such a shift in the amount of off-planet wisdom that's coming onto the planet.
Mm,
I mean, oh my gosh, it used to be like Edgar Casey, sifting through to get information from another dimension was like swimming through mud. It was
mm,
so hard. That connection was just tough. The energy here on Earth was so dense. Now things feel just
mm,
lighter. And people like you who had never really been exposed to channeling are now channeling.
mhm,
And I see so much off-planet wisdom coming down. And for me, that's a breadcrumb. That's a
mm.
clue, folks. There's things that we need to know from
Yeah.
civilizations who are more advanced than ours. And so sometimes I feel like, Stephanie, that there's no way we can fail because we have such a team,
Yeah.
rooting for us. And they're trying so hard. And sometimes I feel like they're trying harder than us, mostly because a lot of people just aren't even really aware of
Mhm.
what needs to come undone to be rebuilt again. How do you feel about the more accessibility to channeling off-planet information now compared to what it used to be?
Well, I'm just gonna adopt your perspective because I love it. And I love the phrase off-planet wisdom. That's beautiful. That says so much. I think it's a combination of perhaps the veil thinning, right? Having more access and a lighter energy from which things can pass through more easily. And also, I know that for me, all it took was for me to see someone brave enough to say, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to channel souls. I'm going to learn how, I'm going to do it, and then I'm just going to do it. For me to say, oh, that looks and feels so beautiful and incredibly amazing that I'm going to play in that too. And now here I am, and my courage to do this out in the world, because even though it's becoming more familiar, this is still not mainstream. We have a ways to go. There's still plenty of resistance and judgment and fear around channeling, for example, or mediumship or any of that. But my courage is actually feeding others who are gaining access to theirs. And this is for me from the 3D realm, it's a lot of this can come to be through seeing and studying and following and supporting others whose work is inspiring and meaningful, and that we have some draw to. We don't always know why we're drawn to this. I did not know why I was so drawn to channeling. Then I experienced what it could do for me. Then I thought, what else could this be? So there's this the ethers participation in the off-planet wisdom, as you say, and then there's our willingness to take more risks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's so funny. I suppose that you do get maybe some pushback or people that don't understand what you do. For me, it's like channeling is like, oh yeah, he's an accountant, she's a channeler. I'm so used to it. I forget that other people, it's new for them. And maybe it's not familiar and it feels a little, I don't know, makes them nervous, maybe.
yeah, for some people, it feels threatening to them. But
Hmm.
I'm lucky. Pretty much only swim in circles of people who
Yeah.
to whom this work is real, is meaningful. Um, but I recognize that I'm in a tiny microcosm of a bigger, grander world, and this is not the narrative of the bigger world yet, but we're definitely moving there. There's been massive shifts with that.
Yeah. And I think that we're going to, I can already see it with just my skills. Like my telepathy is a much more
Mm,
sensitive now. Other people, I see them, they're experiencing clairsentience and they're not understanding that's what they're
mhm,
seeing. It's like we're all becoming a little bit more connected, which is exciting for me to see. When you are channeling, here's two questions in one. First of all, is it energizing for you? Does it make you more tired? It seems like for me, when I'm doing spiritual work, it can be one or the other.
mhm.
And when you are getting information, is it that you're hearing a voice in your head? Is it pictures? How does the information come to you? And is it always the same regardless of who you're channeling? Or do you sometimes hear voices and sometimes see pictures depending on who you're working with?
So, for me, channeling is energizing, and that has to do with the fact that I absolutely adore the people I channel for. And that's a special arrangement that I have with my guides. When I got the courage to agree to show up to do this publicly, because it felt and sometimes can still feel very, very risky to do so. You know, it's a vulnerable place to enter into a space where I have no control over what I'm going to say, over what I'm going to see, over how it comes through. Gosh, what if it doesn't? You know, I used to be afraid that what if nothing came through and here this person is staring at me, waiting for something wise to happen. So I told my guides, I will do this, and I will do this with a full heart. If you all can be the gatekeepers to ensure that those who come for my work are a vibrational match, close match to me. And this, my greatest concern then was that I would be asked to channel very heavy or dark or negative energy. And I was not and am not willing to do that for obvious reasons. But for me in particular, I'm enormously sensitive. It would take me a lot of recovery to get back to stability from that. So my guide said, no worries, sister, we got you covered. And they have literally sent me 99% of my clients, and I have had tens of thousands, are the most exquisite, wonderful, phenomenal, amazing souls walking the planet. I pinch myself after every session, not exaggerating. It is that beautiful a match. Because of that, I can say I'm very energized when I channel. I only channel from fifth dimensional consciousness. It is the highest vibrational loving frequency. It is unity consciousness. So already I'm assured of the pure love and joy. And then I'm channeling for these amazing souls that I just could mush them up. I love them so much once I get to feel their energy. So energizing. And then the second question, I experience channeling. I do hear, obviously not through sound waves, but I do hear the message. And the message, I'm able to hear it and speak it almost at the same time, but there's a very slight delay so that sometimes when something funny is coming through, I am privy to the humor before the words come out to share the humor. So I will start laughing because I can see and feel and hear where this is going. And my client is always like, I wonder what's funny. And then I say the funny thing, and then we're laughing together. So I hear it, I see it, I get a lot of visions. I keep my eyes closed when I channel so that I can go into that third eye space. I feel as well, sometimes in different areas of my body, oftentimes on my skin. And yes, that's how I experience channeling. And then is it always the same? No, I would say that, and this is the beauty that I identified before, I'm always learning. So there's different feels and different vibrations and different frequencies depending who I'm calling in. Some of my clients are much further on their spiritual journey than I am, and they will ask for certain entities that I have never heard of, or energies, or a particular guide of theirs. And but it's not based on my knowing, thank goodness, or I'd really not be very successful at this. So I'm always learning. There's so much more that's expanding for me, and there are different feelings and visions that come through all the time.
Yeah, that must be exciting
Yeah.
to bring in an energy that you weren't even familiar with.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I feel really ignorant
Well,
because
you can't know everybody in the universe. No one
no,
can.
I know. It's the type A aspect. Yeah, but then I'll have to say, okay, yes, I will channel that for you, but can you tell me what it is? Where is it? What's your understanding of it? So I kind of have a sense for what I am tuning into. But yes,
Yeah.
always learning. There's so much here, and I still know nothing.
Isn't it funny? It's like on one level, we know everything. And then I know I walk around my house often going, I just am so confused.
Yeah.
There's just so much. And I think like for us in human bodies with this, I mean, clearly our spirit knows everything and it's probably laughing at us
Yeah.
in a loving way most
Yeah.
of the time. But I feel like for us trying to understand all the secrets of the universe is like me teaching my cat to use my computer. It's just not going to happen. It's just,
That's right.
there's
That's
not quite
right.
the bandwidth. The game is, what can you do with what you got?
Yeah.
What can we
Yes.
do with what we got? And fortunately, I think that we are in a unique time on the planet with the energetic shifting, with the new energies that are coming onto the planet, just with everything, all the information we're getting from off planet to us. We're in a really fun place because now we get to move and create what we really want to live in. How do we really want to live? How is this collective going to be successful? And I believe that that's one question that has not been asked up to this point on the planet is how can this collective become as creative and sustainable and successful in its mission as possible? What do you see? I'm sure that you talk to your guides a lot. At least I would if I had your skills to be able to hear them so clearly. Where do you see humanity going in the next, I don't know, 5 or 10 years? How do you see this unfolding for us, if you want to share that?
Well, I'm going to not give it a time frame because I sense that there's a lot more intensity and challenge and difficulty if we look at it in 5 or 10 years or 15 years time. So the end game that I keep my sights on is humans living in harmony with Earth's rhythms and seasons and tending to again ourselves, our communities, our families, feeding each other. Like I really see us coming back to the most basic ways of sharing and honoring and sustaining and supporting one another. And I grow a few things in my backyard, and it is such a pleasure for me to call my neighbors and be like, do you want some bananas? Do you eat papayas? Hey, do you need any coconuts, mulberries, whatever? There's so much that gets ignited in me at this very basic level of how we nourish each other. So that's the world that I see, one that cares for, there's of course so many repairs that need to be made, but we're caring for nature and each other in the ways that are appropriate.
Yeah.
And we're bringing things back to a more simple way of honoring this enormous gift that life here is, and letting go of this idea of this constant work ethic, this overproduction, this heavy reliance on consumerism, right? Most of us do get our food from the grocery store. Well, what happens when that's disrupted? Because it doesn't take much to disrupt it. We saw it during the pandemic. So when I let my vision go beautiful and big and wild, I see that, and I see human hearts connected, and I see us healing ourselves, having healers. Yes, that includes everything from Western medicine to plant, to shamans, to everybody with their skills, applying that and recognizing that anyone's struggle or lack of freedom is everybody's. So that's just an inherent truth that we aren't living right now, but that exists. That's what I see. I see such a beautiful world.
Oh my gosh, we're going to be living on the same planet, you and I. That's exactly how I see it too. And when I see, oh, we talk about structures and like, I've heard people say, well, where does food come from? The grocery store. No, that's a supply chain.
Right.
And the heavy reliance we have on technology, when I think this is the
Mhm.
most brilliant technology available, we have so much potential as humans. We have a depth of emotion that is rare throughout the cosmos. We're resilient like nobody's business. We're like those little dolls with the big butts that you can't knock over. They just keep popping back up again. We just keep We live in a very toxic environment, unfortunately, based on decisions that have been made, and yet we still get out of bed in the morning. We're amazing, and I can't even imagine what it's going to be like when we're able to put the full force and power of what the human potential is into action. Not only the love, the compassion, the creativity, the emotions of having fun and goofing around and loving each other. It's going to be amazing.
Yes. And so
Yeah.
shall it be.
I can hardly wait. And that's what I'm focusing on. So this has been such a lovely discussion. Thank you so much for sharing the work you do. How can we find out more about you?
You can go to my website, which is soulinsight.com.
Soul Inside Doc. And tell us, I know that you offer channeling and mediumship. It sounds like yours is almost a blending
Mhm.
of the two in a way. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I recently got permission from another professional channel to not have to segment out how mediumship is different from channeling, which might be different from psychic. They're all spirit. And so
yeah,
that's what I'm just going to go with now because it's the thing that is true. And so I used to define mediumship as, channeling the souls of loved ones on the other side. But that's channeling too, and then so it's all spirit. So I teach people how to do what I do. Not the way I do it because I do it my way, but I teach them how to do it their way. And I also envision a world in which we are all trusting our intuition and we are all operating from that place of inner wisdom. So, with that, you can't go wrong. So, I'm in service to humanity's connection to themselves in this way.
oh, beautifully said. Stephanie, thank you so much for today.
Thanks, Kimberly.
And thanks everyone for watching. Bye now. I hope you enjoyed this video. Coming up next, this is a good one, or you might really like this one too. Either one of them could be perfect for you. Before you leave, don't forget to subscribe.